Jessica, Jessica too. Oh, you want to use, you want to use my tablet? Let me get it out for you. No, it's right. You wish you do not go YouTube on your phone? No, you gotta do that. Yeah, I'll send the link to your phone. Let me, yeah, I'm gonna do it. We're gonna be starting in just a moment. We're on YouTube. And I'm gonna share this on social media. I'm gonna share it with you. I just sent it to you and I'll send it to you too. Share. Okay. Page 3 here. Mhm. Oh, so welcome, welcome. We made it. Yeah. We are here live and in person and in living color.
Right, in living color.
In living color here at Tribal Arts Center at 950 Bergen Street, Newark, New Jersey. Just so glad to be here. I'm Reverend Lady Mother, Sandra Addison-Britto. Y'all know me by now. The Divine Feminine Study Group, the spiritual leader here at Triumph. But today is part 4 of the 4-part series that I've been doing under the Divine Feminine Study Group titled Spirituality and Sexuality, a Divine Connection. And I'm so happy because I got a youngin here with me.
That's me, that's me.
It is so good, you know, when you get to be my age, to be around the younger generation. I know some older folks are
Right,
maybe
right.
intimidated by that, but I love it. I love it. I absolutely love it. I have daughters that are about maybe a little older than you, but somewhere in your age group. Then I have grandchildren who are coming up. So I just love the energy of being with the young folks. And I teach.
Right.
So I teach like 18, 19, 20-year-olds, and that keeps me, you know, fresh, keeps me
Yeah.
alert, it keeps me learning and challenges me to just not stay stuck in my box or get stuck there, you know?
That's important. It's very important.
It's important. So today we're going to have this conversation as we close out this 4th series, this 4th lesson in the series. And we're going to really do have a discussion.
I love that. Discussion is wonderful. It's my middle name.
So let me introduce, this is Jessica, otherwise known as Sunday Sunshine Rose.
Sunday Rose Gold, yeah.
Sunday Rose Gold.
Yeah.
And, I'm going to tell you a little bit more about, you know, how she came to have that name. Don't just ignore the background noise. We're in what my daughter calls the children of wonder.
This is a late to put it. Okay, that is a way to put it.
So we are here intentionally and on purpose, you know, because we are gathering in all souls. You know, we don't intend to leave anybody out. So we're just glad to be here. So let me just ground ourselves, as I like to do, as I begin the lesson each week, and just set out intention. Just quiet our spirits and relax in our body. And let's just be together in the space, those that are here with us in person, those of you that are joining us by YouTube, those of you that are on other social media platforms, will be watching this later. We just want to take a breath or two together, that which unites us as one, as living beings on this planet Earth, our Mother Earth. We're going to breathe intentionally, deliberately, and inhale together deeply. We'll hold it and then release. Inhaling. And release. On the inhale, we're breathing in all that we need for this moment, all that the universe has brought to us to share in this space. We're going to breathe that in deeply, and then we're going to release whatever may stand as a hindrance to us just being free in this moment to share together. So let's inhale. And release. And I offer this time, this collective study, this conversation, this sacred space and time and conversation to all that is true and love and divine for our collective good, our collective healing and wholeness, that what we say and share together in this space will go beyond these walls and will extend out into the community, and it'll bear fruit in those that we don't even know, that we will be moving closer to that place of being a more just and loving community, where we all are safe and loved and free to be. Ashe and amen.
Ashe.
All right, so let me just get some of the formalities out of the way. So over the last few weeks, the goal of this study, when I began it back in June, was to just share some material facts for our community around the area. The study of sex is a biological category of difference, which I came to find that a lot of folks don't know, because they really haven't had the opportunity to be exposed to the study of sex and gender beyond maybe 8th grade biology, you know?
Right.
So they really didn't have facts, and especially important, I think it is for our communities of faith. Those of us that lead in these communities have a platform that has the ability to influence and do injury or be a source of health and healing.
Yes.
So I thought it was important to just share, because I'm a spiritual leader, but I'm also trained academically in this field. So to just share the knowledge that I have. So that was one of the things you wanted to talk about. And I wanted to share how gender, the idea of gender as a social construct, has shifted and changed over time. There has not been one fixed way of thinking about gender. It's been fluid, even though we may not know that, but it has always been fluid, right? So then we wanted to talk about sex as an expression of the human condition. And by that, I mean, as sex as being a healthy, wholesome part of who we are as human beings, nothing to be ashamed of, or to speak secretly about, or that's nasty, what we were told as little kids maybe, but it's a healthy part of who we are. It's a part of our expression, and that is a part of our way of being spiritual beings. Again, speaking from the perspective of someone as a leader in the spiritual community. So we talked about all of that, weeks 1 and 2 and 3. So this week I really wanted to delve more into my conversation with you. Now, first, of course, a little background or intro that you would like to give for yourself. And then I have a few conversational points or questions, and we can let it go where it goes. All right. You know, I start with a script, but the script doesn't have to be where we go. We'll take it as the spirit leads. All right.
Look, that's one thing I trust the spirit.
Yeah. So, would you all welcome me? Help me welcome this beautiful, beautiful soul.
I like to say that I identify as a Black woman, but I'm not a woman. And when I say that, I mean that gender, like you said, gender and sex are very different. And they're not exclusively like dependent on each other. And so for me, I identify as a gender non-conforming Black woman. So for me, that really does mean that the way that society has said that women are to act, to be, to believe, to breathe, that is not the thing that I subscribe to. But I have had the experience of a Black woman, a Black femme, because I was raised by a Black woman. I was raised by a Black grandmother. So it is my identification as a woman and as a Black woman specifically is rooted in a cultural context and an experiential context, and not in what I was told. So that's the first. My name is Sunday Rose Gold. I like to start off honestly by saying you're, because I'm from New York. And if you
from
are
Queens, right?
I'm from Queens. I'm from
Shout out to Queens.
I'm from Jamaica, Queens. I really like a polling response. So if you are watching this, whenever you are watching this, when I say you're, wherever you are, I need you to say it back. Okay. And then you just practice that, just so we can make sure that you're alive and well. Okay. My pronouns are she, her, they, them. Like I said, I am from Jamaica, Queens. I moved to Newark, New Jersey in 2020 when the world shut down. Don't y'all remember that? I'm a performance artist. I'm a professional executive assistant. I've been doing that for over 9 years. I am also very much so into sex positivity, making sure that people feel like they can express themselves in the ways that feel most authentic to them in whatever, gender expression that is. I'm always going to amplify the voices of Black, queer, and trans people, period. Because if not for trans women, if not for Black trans women, we would not be where we are. And I'm a person who is a part of the LGBTQAI community. And so I know that if not for Black trans women, if not for Black women, if not for Black femmes, we would not be where we are today, and we wouldn't have made as much progress. And who is it who's out there on the lines? It's Black women and femmes and trans women. So I always like to give honor where honor is due. I'm grateful for everybody's support in the community and for what you all do. So a little bit about my name. Sunday is a name I gave to myself. I was raised Christian. And so I always felt like the day of the week was very important to me, and it represented peace. It represented like just bringing yourself together. It represented centering yourself, right? So Rose Gold is actually one name by itself. And funny stories. So Rose Gold is actually my stripper name. Ooh. Rose Gold is my stripper name. And so I was in my 20s, I was told I needed a stripper name. They were like, oh, like you have to have a stripper name. And I was like, well, I want the name to give, I wanted to tell a story of worthiness. And I also wanted the name to tell a story of importance. Because a lot of the times when folks think about sex work or sex workers or strippers or dancers or exotic entertainers, they automatically devalue them because they think that, oh, this person is an object and therefore you must be treated as such. So with my stripper name, I wanted to make sure that I incorporated a flower that is the highest vibration, which is the rose, and gold because it is a metal and it's something that people really do value. And so Rose Gold was just my stripper name. Sunday came after. So then in an attempt to really bring my identities together, right? Because we're all light and dark, we're all of these things. I took Sunday and Rose Gold and boom, now I have a business.
Wow. Wow. I mean, you said a mouthful there, a lot. And I'm learning about Sunday.
True story.
Jessica, as we're sitting here. So this is great.
Yeah.
So I can react in real time to what you're sharing with me. But I think it's so interesting that Rose Gold is your stripper name, and that's how you came by that.
Yeah.
And the way you talk about how in our culture, that idea of being a stripper, automatically we think of these poor women, or we think of them being immoral or objectifying them. And one of the things over the years, because I teach in this field of sexuality, gender and women's studies, that we've talked about this idea of prostitution, sex workers, and like what is the difference in someone was empowered? I'm not talking about someone who is, say, desperate with choices,
right? Because it's different.
It's very different.
Very different.
But someone who is empowered, they have agency, and they're making a conscious decision to work in a certain field. And they use a part of their body in that field. What's the difference in it being a sex worker or an assembly line worker or someone selling their intellectual abilities?
Yes.
On the job market. We compartmentalize those things in different ways, but in our economy, essentially what we do is sell parts of us to the economy, to the marketplace.
Yes, and that is listen, it is sex work is the oldest form of work. Right. And it is something that I believe is to be valued and revered, mainly because the spiritual and the sexual are one and the same. They're not separate. And I know that my therapist told me one time, there's no separation in God, right? Like there's no separation in God. So when we create the separation, like God is no longer there. You know what I mean? Right. So
indivisible God.
Right, exactly. It's like you can't take it apart. It's not. And so Sunday Rose Gold too is something and someone that I realized that I could bring those two identities together. I didn't think, because of the way I was raised, because of being raised Christian, because of the family that I was in, and the homophobia, all these things, I didn't feel like there was ever a way for me to use or bring both of those identities together. Because I am very caring. I very much so hold space for people. But I also am very much so into my sensuality and my eroticism. And I think for me, in my sex work, initially I started out working with like cisgender heterosexual folks, right? And so that was a time. And I also was stripping because I needed to pay for dance training. Okay. I needed to pay for dance training, and that dance training got me on the VMAs with Lizzo. So it worked. And I just know that like I wanted to make sure that I could, these two identities, like this Sunday, this rose gold, I wanted them to be able to marry into each other. I wanted that, but I didn't think it was possible because of like the kinds of things that I was told. And I think I got to a point in my life where I was like, well, either gonna take me as I am, leave me.
Absolutely, absolutely. I want to go back to where you started, talking about how you identify
Mhm,
culturally as a woman,
mhm,
but how that really pushes the boundaries of what a lot of people think of as what a woman should be. I just thought it was interesting the way you described that, 'cause I never thought about that intentionally for myself.
mhm.
But when I think back, growing up, and again, growing up in church, and the idea of what a female is, what a woman is, what a woman's role is that for myself, I always knew I didn't fit that model, that mold,
Right,
and just kind of like little nuanced things about the way a woman's brain is supposed to work.
right,
You're not analytical, you
right.
know. And it was so funny because with my husband, I would tell my students, listen, my husband and I are so opposite. I cannot watch television and watch one channel. He can put one channel on and watch the same channel all day long, and I'm flipping.
Right.
Because my attention isn't there. I will never ask anyone for directions if I'm lost. He would ask anybody. So we are just, our brains just work very differently. And so that idea that I always knew I was more analytical in my brain. I had a different way of viewing the world. I always knew I had these leadership abilities that the church didn't afford me to have. I said, you weren't supposed to have those because that's not what a woman is supposed to do.
Right.
And so I always knew that the way society or the way I was taught, the mold that I was supposed to fit in, I didn't fit there.
Right.
And so I was always kind of pushing and elbowing my
Mhm,
way out of that,
mhm.
And so, yeah, I thought it was interesting that you shared that.
And so this has been a little bit of my gender journey. Um, I came into a space when I moved into Jersey. I was dating a non-binary person. And I felt like I didn't have access to my anger. I felt like I couldn't access my anger. I felt like I couldn't access my rage. And a part of that is that I learned, right? Because I did a lot of inquiry on myself, was because I was taught that as a girl, as a woman, right? You don't show anger.
What emotion we cannot have.
We are not allowed, right?
That's
So
reserved for males only.
right. So I was like, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna move away from the gender binary. I said, I'm gonna no longer identify as a girl. I said, I'm not gonna identify as a. So for a while, I went by they, them pronouns and just really, probably for about 6 months. And I just wanted to see if that would open up some space for me to be able to access my feelings. And it did. And so once I had that experience, I thought to myself, okay, well, I do feel very much so like close and related to like Black womanhood. So I was like really trying to come to ends about how I reckon with identifying as a Black woman, but also knowing that I'm gender non-conforming, meaning I'm always pushing against the binary. I don't think that the binary is something that should. There's so many more genders. There's always been more genders.
Absolutely. And there's a whole spectrum of gender.
Right.
Anne Foster Sterling, one of the feminist biologists that I've used over the years in my study, has talked about this and written and studied about this from a scientific view, and published about this. She started many years ago talking about 5 sexes and how biology really informs gender, but gender informs biology. We think of science as being absolute. That's just what it is.
Right.
It's interesting. There's a minister that I follow, and I love him because he reminds me of my Pentecostal roots. He's a recording artist. I'm not going to mention his name. Very popular recording artist, family of artists. But he has just the last couple of weeks went into this tirade about the LGBTQ community, and from his Sunday morning pulpit, he is proclaiming to his congregation that if you were born, and I'm almost quoting him, XX chromosome, then you are female, and XY chromosome, you're male, and that settles it. And I'm like, brother, no, 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 it's far more complicated than that. Even the biology tells us that's not so. It's far more different and diverse in the spectrum of what we can be in terms of our chromosomal makeup. It's far more diverse. Now you want to layer that on top of biology. But that's why I said so many of us think we know,
Right.
and we haven't passed the 8th grade. We're
Mhm.
still stuck in 8th grade biology and don't really understand. But you mentioned, you talked about connecting your sex work with, I think, to your therapist,
Yeah, with their-
of God or your spirituality. And I want you to talk a little bit more about that. How do you see spirituality and sexuality as being connected?
So I think about it like this, right? You know how like you in church, right? And then like people start, like, you know, people are the pastor's preaching and the music start going and then the spirits start moving through the room and then the people start shouting and the people start clapping and the people start running. I see that as a spirit of creation.
Wow.
Like, I'm like, that is, I'm like, everyone is making things happen.
Well, and it's like this burst of energy, right?
Just like
A burst of
in,
energy.
just like in sexuality, right? You know,
Yeah.
you feel that attraction and you're like,
in a sense,
let me tell you something, as a person who has faithfully ran in the church, I was known to be a runner. I used to take off. I don't know if I could even find a
you
way.
want one of those that we can put our arms around, what you did for those first.
Yeah, you were like, you have to put up the sheet. You have to take the sheet. I needed 4 sheets. Because and they needed to move with me. Everybody was getting their exercise.
Mhm.
But because every time I would start shouting, literally the chemical biological thing that starts happening in your body when you
Yes.
start moving it, right? You get you get all the stuff going on.
Your brain.
And then you feel, and you know what's so funny? Shout out to Shaniqua Anderson. Shaniqua Anderson, I love you. Shaniqua Anderson is a sex therapist who I connected with last year, who told me, I saw her last weekend. She said, you know what the biggest sex organ is? The brain.
Absolutely.
The brain.
Absolutely.
So it's like, for me, spirituality and sexuality connect in the creation, right? In your, when you are, however it is that you, because you have sexual orientation, right? And then you have like sexual identity and expression. And then you have like, right? And so it's less about who you're with and how y'all decide what y'all gonna do and the ways y'all gonna do it, right? And so it's like, when people are, or for me, I'll say, when I'm having sex, one, I'm thinking a lot about my intention. I'm actually thinking a lot about that. And
Present in the moment.
I'm very present, and I'm not gonna, and honestly, once I started to merge like meditation and sex, that's when I started to unlock it. I was like, oh, there's something here. So just to sum all that up, it's really about creation. The energy that creates people is the same energy that creates shouting, that creates clapping, that creates people going hallelujah, amen. It's the same thing to me. So that's,
And you know what, again, I'm one of those who knows what it is to get that release in church.
mhm.
And I think that's why, I am unashamedly, and will probably be all of my life, Pentecostal in expression.
I was in a,
Because there is nothing like that release.
Nothing.
I have come to church with just, the weight of
the
being
world, yes.
and being able to release it.
Yes.
But as you said that, I've thought over the years and thinking about, a lot of the older people who I didn't always understand growing up. Now I'm an older person. But just being in that space before, I caught the fire, so to speak, and not understanding what that experience was. But many of them, they were letting out their frustration, their sexual frustration, their own inhibitions. That was a space where they could come, especially in the Pentecostal space. That's why I love it. And they could go, they could be a runner.
Yes.
They could be a screamer.
Yes, because no one's gonna look at you crazy.
No one's gonna
It's a safe space for you to act up. Whatever that acting up is, especially if it is then, perpetuated by the spirit of God, right? Then like they give you that space. And I think the idea of like having safety, right, in the spaces that are both religious and then also like sexual or like I think that's a similarity right there. Like you need safety in order to be able to.
And that's why for me, creating this space here that is safe and sacred is so important. Because we've had that at times in our churches. But what I also found, which was interesting, that being in the closet was an expression, but it was the best known secret, right? Because we always had gay, lesbian, gay males, and even those who were transgender or intersex people. Now that we have that term in our churches, what I found, and I thought about this recently, is that almost for the gay men, who was often the talented ones, as musicians, sometimes they were the pastor, they were the down low ones. So the down low, the one on the down low. The one that was the musicians or the choir directors was often more flamboyant with their expression. But for the women, I think the women were far more oppressed in their sexuality because they didn't have the ability to even have the appearance of being lesbian, because that was a way of putting them back in their place by even accuse them of being that. And I've seen that happen. Say, oh, you shouldn't be too friendly with Ella, you're going to end up being. But it was a way of really attacking her as a woman and saying, you're not fitting into the mold that we've said you should, or the performance that we want you to be as we've defined as a woman.
Yes, and there's also this, for me, when I was in church, like, and in the ministry, like always in things, I had someone say to me jokingly, right? Because I cut my hair, right? I shaved my head and had my hair low, and immediately, what do people think when you have your hair low? You're gay, right? They think what? This is specifically if, like, I'm talking about Christian, cisgendered, heterosexual people. They immediately go, oh, you're gay, you hate men, you're a feminist.
Because your hair was supposed to be your glory. And a short haired woman.
Oh, yeah, no one's gonna want you.
Abomination.
Right. So he was like, oh, so you hate men now? You a feminist? And I'm like, what? What? So it's just like again, that is a stereotype. You know what I mean?
A stereotype that women, especially Black women, have had to deal with, because our sexuality has always been violated by this colonial view of our body.
Because the raping and the pillaging of the people.
Yeah. And so we've always felt the pressure of trying to justify or bring dignity or validate our expression. No, I'm not that, I'm not that, I'm not that, because society had no respect for the Black woman. You were either the Jezebel or you were the, Aunt Jemima. You were the whore. There was no holy sexuality for the Black woman. There wasn't a safe space for her to be a sexual being and be respected as that. So for in the church, for the church to overlay that on her, on us as women, was a double bind, because we faced that in the community, in the larger dominant culture.
Yeah.
But we also faced it within the church. Thankfully, we're waking up to some degree. Some of us are not as my brother I talked about, that's the minister, and I'm praying for him. Because some things you have to be awakened to. No one can tell you.
Yeah.
You have to be awakened
like
to it.
Come off your eyes.
Like Paul. You have to be maybe blinded for a totally blind until God opens your eyes and you understand it. But I think with what I hear you saying, and it's you with your own self-awareness and becoming comfortable in your skin, in your spirituality and your sexuality. Of finding a place where a positive sexuality. What I call that. Talk a little bit about what does that mean? What does that look like for you?
Yeah. So I'm going to say that when I was younger, I realized that I liked women, right? When I was younger, but there was this pressure around liking men or having sex with men. And so as I explored that in my life, I learned a lot, right? I learned a lot in sexual relationships with men. I learned a lot about how they wanted me to perform. I learned a lot about how I could perform. I'm a performer by nature. I'm a performer by profession.
Yeah.
Right, so.
Performing artist.
Yes, I'm a performance artist. I've been doing this since I was like 5 or 6 years old, 31. So I learned a lot about what it means to play the role, and to be the object. Right, and I learned that through my sexual experiences with men. And I got to a point where I was like, I actually don't like this. I was like, I don't like this. I know what I like, but I'm scared to pursue it or to go for it because of how I've been perceived, what my mom has said about me, what my, my church, you know what I mean? That kind of stuff. So, like I told y'all, I was stripping. I still do strip, so I mean, but I was stripping and I was stripping mainly in like heterosexual straight places. And I wondered if there was a place to do this where there were queer people. Right, like I couldn't even think, like I couldn't even fathom that. And so, oh yes.
Oh, but they don't really know maybe what that term queer means.
Okay, so sure. So for me, right, because I feel like queer, I'm gonna start with the dictionary definition, right? So queer means strange, right? If you look it up in the dictionary, it's gonna say strange. For me, queer is my sexual orientation, meaning that I really just say I'm not straight. Right, so how people perceive me, when people see me, they think I'm a Black woman. So for the perception, right, it's Black woman be with Black men. For me, it's not. Or Black woman be with men, or women be with men. Right, that's not how it goes. It's me. I am attracted to gender non-conforming people, non-binary people, trans folks, women, and anything outside of a cisgender heterosexual man. That's right. But
in terms of sexual
so queer for me is a sexual orientation, and it is also a politic. So queer for me means that I'm not going with the flow. I'm actually going against her. Right. So as we talked about gender identity earlier, about how I identify with my gender, so on and so forth. Like my gender identity is also wrapped into my politic as far as queerness goes.
Talk a little bit more about the politics. What does that mean?
So for me, the politic of queerness means that, one, I'm always going to stand up for and speak up for Black trans femmes, women, non-binary people. That's a part of the politic, right? That is a part of my queer politic. Another part of that politic is that I revere the works of folks like Bell Hooks, right? Audre Lorde, a lot of the great lesbian feminists who have come before us to pave the way. And I use a lot of their teachings in my life. And I use a lot of my teachings in my relationships.
So how do you, so I'm glad you talked about the queerness and the intersection of race. Because within some of the studies, there's always a tension between women of color or queer people of color,
yes,
versus the dominant group.
Right.
And there's a perception by some that it's just all one melting pot.
Right.
And the issues are all the same.
Right.
Ignoring race. Within the context of our country and our culture in this world, race is always
especially in America.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so that sometimes that's the card, that's the dominant card, depending upon whether you're the privileged race, whether that's your privilege card, because to be queer and white is different from being queer and Black.
It is,
or
right.
Hispanic. And I think folks don't always understand that doesn't annihilate race because you went into that queer space.
Exactly. I agree.
So I wanted to just share though, as you grew up in church, and so I don't have to tell you about that. You were a runner. So
I was a runner.
The runner. It's interesting. She went from Pentecostalism to Baptist. I don't know how running is going now in the Baptist.
No, in the Baptist, I feel like they're gonna be like,
just hold it, right? They are, just
all of them.
But the thing with the Baptist, and don't y'all beat me up on my Baptist.
Not me either.
Brothers.
Okay.
Don't y'all beat me up. But Baptists are very more open to their ability to quote unquote sin. So they can smoke, they can drink, they can go to parties.
Yes.
Yes. And if the pastor had someone on the side, they wouldn't, think he was necessarily going to hell as long as he kept it quiet. So they were much more open. So they didn't necessarily need that outlet. Whereas the Pentecostal folks couldn't do nothing but go to church.
I know, because
Fun was, fun itself was sin. So
yeah,
part of that, I think, is that the reason why the Pentecostals needed that expression, because how are you using your creativity?
that's another thing. Creative energy is so connected to like sexuality, right?
That's what it is.
So it's like, and that it all goes back. It's all about creation, it's all about creativity, it's all about what we're making.
And I was going to say before, I'm glad you mentioned that again, because it came back to me. I think one of the biggest harms that has been done within the Christian tradition historically is this idea of original sin, St. Augustine, and connecting that to the Adam and Eve story, and connecting that to the act of sex.
Right.
The moment we did that, we then said sex can only be tolerated within marriage and for procreation.
Right.
And then you're still going to be born in sin if you come through that way. So therefore, Jesus had to be born with, through a mother who had not had sex.
Which, again, I'm like the shame.
The
right?
shame.
There's so much shame around sex just in that alone.
But that is a part of our warped thinking that has, I think, developed over the years, part of it due to Western influences of Christianity and how it has developed. Right. Because even within Judaism, going back in ancient times, it wasn't as restricted in that way as it is became within Christianity. That whole connecting of sex to a behavior with sin and original sin really put the human family in a dilemma. This is such a part of who I am, but yet to do this is sinful. But I'm permitted to do it under certain situations, conditions, and only for this. But even the children are the fruit of that creativity. They're still sinful and they need to be atoned for. I mean, there's some kind of mental illness there.
And the spirit, and I have a spiritual form, or I need a spiritual scenario. I need to be in a religion, or I have to agree with these things or follow these things because this is the guide of my life. And this is what's helping me. This is how I'm getting my blessings, or, or this is how I'm going to get what I need. You know what I'm saying? So it's really, I'm so glad you said that, because I really put a lot of words to, I think the tension that I was feeling for so long as a young person in church, because I was just like, I don't know, that just doesn't.
We have a God, we invented a God that obviously knows nothing about sex.
That's what I'm like, okay, well, if Jesus had to come through and then there was no sex to be had, because that made Jesus more pure. That's what it felt like. That made Jesus more pure because he came through a woman who ain't never had sex before, so that's gonna be great.
Yeah, so he was tainted by original sin. Because all of us are tainted by original sin. Because
is that like saying sex is the original sin?
Yeah.
That's ghetto.
It is. Yeah. That's what that teaching traces from. What is the original sin? And a lot of folks, most lay people in church couldn't tell you. They just they just accept what's been taught. They don't know where that comes from. But it's really rooted in that teaching that original sin has to do with sex. And you were born in sin because you came vis-a-vis a sexual act. Isn't that twisted? Yeah. And so really disrupting that and interrupting that is, for me, is to say, I don't embrace that idea of originals. There's original potential in all of us. There's no original sin. And the divine must have that sexual energy within itself. Both masculine and feminine.
Yeah.
Co-creating together in expression for it to come through in us as the creation of the divine. And so sex is neither nasty, dirty, vile, but it's also not something to be just trampled over in the mud.
It's really not. I think it is something that should be, if people you want to have sex casually, you should do that. I feel like you should
Be
do that
safe,
and be safe.
make sure you of consenting age
Consent,
and with someone that has the ability to consent.
not under any kind of drugs and or substances.
Absolutely. And so
Right.
if you are consenting as adults making choices,
Then and y'all have casual,
that's your
that's
choice.
sacred. If y'all are married and y'all are having sex,
It's
that's
sacred.
sacred. If y'all are dating and having sex, that is
It's
sacred, right?
sacred.
Because that is, yo, I'm just so happy that you put words to that. I don't like, that's really something that I wrestled with for a long time about that idea, like trying to figure out, it felt like I couldn't put my fingers on it. Like I was like, okay, so people are telling me like I can't have sex, one, I definitely can't have sex with women, two, right? And so it's like, so if I can't do these things, why can't I do these things? Oh, well, sex before marriage. I was like, I don't know. I feel like there's something else. I was like, I feel like there's something else. And as I started to like kind of dig for it, ask some questions, people, like you said, really couldn't give me what that thing was. So you really just answered a box.
And it's complex,
Mhm.
Jesse, because the idea of original sin and that sex is the original sin.
Mhm.
Sexual intercourse is the original sin. But that whole, there's a book that I've used called Hard Bargains, and the authors are Lawson and Hirschman. And the title of the book, what they examine is they're both attorneys, and they write this book about the history of sex. And so they go back to, biblical times and before the ancient Greeks and Babylonian, they trace out how sex has been regulated in the law.
Mhm.
And so part of the reason for regulating women's sexual bodies has to do with patriarchy. Now,
Right.
we all, part of the history of this, and I could go on forever on this.
We gonna get into the, we gonna get into this afterward.
Yes.
We gonna get into,
The
I just go to class.
matrimony, matrimony means, holy matrimony means
Right.
holy making of a mother. But historically, in evolution, there was direct knowledge that the baby comes through the woman's vagina.
Right.
So you knew who the mother of the child was. Historically, tracing who the father wasn't so evident. And in fact, in the history of evolution, that knowledge that sex is what led to procreation wasn't even there. Once that knowledge became aware, then how do we know if women are having sex with multiple partners? How do we know who the father is? And that interest was only due to the rise of patriarchy and property rights. And so in order to ensure property rights and ownership, we have to regulate the woman's body to make sure she's only having sex with a designated person. So that has nothing really to do with God or the divine or divinity. It's all about how we constructed our culture and our society, and really the rise of patriarchy, which we can trace that out also historically. But
Y'all see my face? That is so ghetto.
we
So ghetto. Like it.
But we have only a few minutes.
Yes,
So
yes.
I want to I want you to just share with our community, those that are listening, those that are watching, that some other point. I may just send this link to that brother that I talked to you about. There's some things, having grown up in church, having walked this walk, you're still a young person.
Praise.
You know, you haven't been jaded yet, and just
I praise God.
you know, you still have hope and possibility just coming through your veins. You know, anyone that meets you, you feel like you're very, I feel from you that you see the potential in the world.
I do.
And you have an outlook for the possibility that we all have.
Yeah.
What would you say to these churches, these faith communities, these spiritual leaders who are struggling with this changing idea, what it means to be a gendered person, with being queer, with the LGBTQIA community? They're struggling between, they believe the Bible says this, they believe God requires this. They want to be a loving person, they want to be a loving minister. They want to support their congregation and maybe even someone in their family.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say to them? How can they do no harm?
How? Me, where's the camera? Where's the camera?
Right here, look straight at you.
So the first thing I'm gonna say is that we have 2 ears and 1 mouth. And that's, we could do more listening than talking. So the first thing I would say is listen. Listen to the people in your congregation. The second thing I want to say is respect them. So if the people in your congregation say my pronouns are she, her, they, them, I don't care if they said their pronoun is candle. I don't care if they said their pronoun was iPhone. I don't care. That's their pronoun that you're gonna use. Right? Third, educate yourself. And don't go to them to educate you. Don't ask the people who are being oppressed to teach you how not to oppress them.
Not their responsibility.
That's not their responsibility. That's free. Don't do
Not
that.
their responsibility.
Right? So do your own education. And then also like in your talk about gender and sex inside of your churches in a way where we're talking about pronouns, where we're talking about gender identity, where we're talking about sexuality. These are things that we're taking out of schools, right? We're taking them out of schools because they're like, okay, no, that's not what you're talking about. But there are people coming to church who identify in these spaces, and you should make space for them, right? So those are those things. And also I would say shout out to Erica Mason. Y'all, all y'all should go listen to her album.
Oh, absolutely.
Because she definitely queer Christian. Yeah.
Queer Christian music.
Queer Christian, Erica Mason, amazing. Got it. So I would tell every church leader, listen to that album, do those 3 things. And here's the thing, you're gonna do harm. Harm's gonna happen. So what we need to do is figure out how the repair of that harm. Yeah. So instead of trying to avoid hurting someone's feelings or harming somebody, accept that you will, and then have a conversation about how you can make it right before it happens. So that when it does happen, you have a blueprint that you can use. That would be nice.
Excellent points. Erica Mason, I love her music. I
love you, Erica.
Introduced to it. It's beautiful, beautiful. And I think it's a good point that you said. I appreciate how you said you will do harm. Because even in our best intentions, we will misstep, we'll say something, we will harm someone unintentionally. And I think as a parent, as a spiritual leader, as a person in community, as a friend, as a human being, we always have to be ready to say, even when we harm someone and we didn't intend it, to quickly, say, listen, I'm sorry.
I am sorry.
I am sorry.
Yes.
I am sorry. Take accountability.
Apologize.
Yes.
Move forward. However that got to
Move
work.
forward. And the importance of educating yourself. Don't make assumptions about what you know.
Because you don't know anything.
You don't.
You don't know.
And for me, someone who has matriculated and spent a lot of years with my head in the books, that has taught me not so much what I know, but that be careful, there's so much more you don't know.
Because it's like, oh my God, if I could spend
tread lightly.
all these things, and
tread lightly, because there's so much more that I don't know. And that's why when I started, I said, I love being around younger people. I love being around people that are diverse, because it allows me to then expand to what I don't see and what I don't hear.
And this happens for me too, in community with you, right? Because listen, y'all, I never thought that I would be in a place having a conversation with an elder person about sexuality, about how I was stripping, and about how I got to where I was. I never thought in my life this would happen. Here we are. So God is able. God is able. And so I wanted to say thank you to you, right? Because it is through you that a lot of even my own wounds are being healed, right? Like in sitting here and having this conversation, like to have this intergenerational dialogue. I really did at a point in my life go and say to myself, like, oh, it's okay if I never get to talk about these things with somebody who is, like an elder older than me, who may have come from a different gender. You know what I'm saying? Like I actually made peace with that. And so as I've started to get in my art journey and I see where I am now, I'm just really grateful for the work that you do. Grateful that I wound up here, grateful I ran up in these doors. And for anybody else, whoever is watching, if y'all don't come here, you should. If you haven't come through, you should. If you see this link, send it to your friends, send it to your homies, send it to your family, send it to your pastors. You know what I mean? Look, if you like parts of this, look, get some clips, get some audio clips, send them over to your friends, let them know what's going on, okay? Share the good news, because the good news is that sexuality, right, and our spirituality are very much so connected.
very much connected. They're divinely connected. There's nothing to be ashamed of. It's sacred, it's holy. And you don't have to hold your head down and feel like, you're the oddball out. And I love the way queer was taking back that word and disarming it from those who wanted to use it against a community and taking it and say, no, there's no power in this for you.
It's not.
Yeah, we've owned this. I just appreciate this conversation and I thank you for being here. It's just a quick story. Getting to this place for me has been a journey. In 2017, when we were a different kind of place, different kind of church, we were planning our annual summer convocation meeting, which was going to be held in outside of Philadelphia. And I wanted to bring this conversation to the meeting, 2017. And there was pushback within the body. And I wanted to do it because I knew, as I said, I've been in church for years. I knew people were living in the closet. I knew there were those that were ministering that were gay. There was one gentleman that I had been on the search committee. And when we interviewed him, I knew right away he was gay, but he never acknowledged it. And I wanted to create a space where within the community, folks would be able to begin to own their truth and be free. The interesting thing about it, and that person was so oppressed in their own fear of coming out, that they never let anyone in that group in our church know about their sexuality. And I never would have asked them. That's not for me to do for anyone.
No,
that's someone's own story to tell.
it is, yeah.
But that person really then turned the tables on me and tried to make it seem like I was doing something, But I understood that, and I had to bear that burden for a while. And I said, that's the price sometimes we have to pay. I don't see myself as a savior. I just see myself, and not even as a sacrificial lamb. I see myself as one who has fought all my life, even when I didn't know I was, to be a free spirit.
Same.
And for me, I can sacrifice everything except my freedom. I have to be free.
Yeah.
And I know it's like taking, the oxygen out of me to take away my freedom.
Yeah.
And that's what I want to extend to other people. And so that freedom is what I wanted to bring. And if it costs that, so be it. But that journey has what's helped me get to here and say it was worth it. Whatever that price was, it was worth it. So I appreciate you. We have 3 minutes left. I want to just give a shout out again to all of my sisters and brothers, whatever faith community that you're in. Do your due diligence. I know for the most part, ministers within the Christian church, and I've been in church for a long time, most of us have good intentions. Most of us, quote unquote, love the Lord. We want to do what we think, believe is the right thing to do, but you can kill someone and not know it.
Sure can.
Paul was killing the saints, thinking he was doing the work of the Lord, and he wasn't. So let's be careful. We have these examples in front of us. Let's be careful that we're not killing Jesus over again, that we're not crucifying him over again. Every time, and it just, all I ask and what I ask of my students, it's not my task to tell anyone what to think, but it's my task, if I'm any good at my craft, is to challenge you to push back on the barriers in your mind. And to break down those barriers so that you can entertain maybe an opposing thought. And just entertain that for a moment and see where it goes. So I appreciate you all listening. Share this, hit like, share. If you want to reach out to us, reach out to me. I'm Reverend Sandra, triumphlifecenter@gmail.com. You can email me. You can find us on our website, Triumph Church of the New Age.org International. We have Facebook pages, Triumph Church of the New Age International, Triumph Life Center, and Spiritual Connections Cafe, Triumph School of Integral Studies, and Women to Women Ministries. any of those pages, you can find out about us and how to get in touch with me. We're at 950 Bergen Street, North New Jersey, in the heart of the city.
And I'm Sunday Rose Gold. You can find me on the internet everywhere. Sunday Rose Gold, SundayRoseGold.com, Sunday Rose Gold on Instagram, Sunday Rose Gold on Twitter. Okay, you can Google me. I'll pop up.
Look her up. This has been great. Thank you so much. Thank you. I'm gonna ask you to just, do whatever, sing something, pray something, meditate something.
Oh, I'd love.
Take us out.
All right,
Like
I'm gonna take us out in a prayer, right? Honestly, do what you want. If you want to keep your eyes open, keep your eyes open. If you want to close them, close them. Whatever you feel most comfortable to do. You can also bring your eyes to a soft gaze to the floor, to the tip of your nose, whichever works the best for you. Okay, we're gonna take a couple of deep breaths here, and then we're gonna go into a quick prayer, and we're gonna just end it all out. Listen, there's one thing that we all have in common, and it's the breath. The only thing that is different between you and someone who is not here is your breath. This is a time for you to just be aware of just one breath, because that's all we're gonna do together. We're gonna take one. So we're gonna inhale on a count of 4, hold for 2, and then release for 4. So you can just wait on my count. You don't have to do anything. You don't have anywhere to be. You don't have anything to do. You can just completely surrender yourself to this moment. I'm gonna take care of you. It's okay. So when I count of 4, we're gonna inhale through the nose. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold at the top. And exhale 4, 3, 2, 1. God, ancestors, spirit, all that is, I thank you for this moment. I thank you for the opportunity to be here. I thank you for Sandra. I thank you for this space. I thank you for everyone who is going to watch this. I really do pray that the spiritual leaders and those who are in the institution of the church, that they hear this message and that they are able to create and make space for people. And for those who are watching who may have any kind of insecurity around their sexuality, around their spirituality, and problems figuring out how they're going to reconcile those two things, I want you to know that they're already reconciled for you. They're already reconciled for you. I want you to know that. And I want you to know that because of the way whoever you like, whatever you like, it's okay. It's okay. God still loves you. The ancestors still love you. Spirit still loves you. There is nothing wrong with you. And so I just thank God that there's nothing wrong with us. I thank God that there is no shame. I'm grateful that there also is no darkness. And I pray that for anyone who is figuring out how to come to terms with that the scales are lifted from their eyes and they're able to see how beautiful and wonderful they are as they are. Thank you so much to all the energies that brought us here today. I pray everyone's safe travel as they leave this space. And I am grateful for the opportunity to be able to use my story. And I'm praying that every single need, everyone who's watching this, those who are in this room, I pray that all of your needs are met. I pray that you want for nothing. I pray that you want for nothing. I pray that you want for nothing. And I ask this in the name of my Ori, the ancestors, spirit, Father, Mother, God, whoever it is that you rock with. I say amen.
Sure. Amen. So be it, and so it is. That was awesome. Awesome.